So he said the Chachamim said, Tanakama says 9. Rabbi Yehuda said 9.5. But in Bavel, you don't go by 9. You go by if you're going to lose money or make money. Says the Gemara 12a3. Davla. The left side, second paragraph. Davla, watering hole.
Davlat.
Yeah, what does Davlat mean?
All your possessions. All your
wealth. Oh, okay. Your net worth. Amar Nachman Beidalu Yoma. So if you have a watering hole, Rav Nachman says each partner must receive an amount for which he can draw enough water daily to irrigate for a full day. Let's see 25. Rav Nachman's reasoning parallels that of Rav Yosef. Workers were paid by the day to irrigate fields. Thus, if the ditch provided less than enough water to irrigate for a full day, the worker would be paid a full day's wages anyways. So you have to split the watering hole. That way each guy could get enough water that it would be worthwhile to hire the field worker and that he shouldn't lose money. Pardesa, when dividing a vineyard, Amar Avod Shmuel bat shlosha kabin. Each partner has to receive at least 3 kav of the vineyard. Okay, 26.
Can they come to an agreement when they split the field? We share.
Yeah, we're talking about when they're forcing each other. Now, when they want, they can split whatever they want. But when we want to force, this is the minimum. Yeah, Doctor, 26.
26 states, in an area of 1,250 square amot, the calculation converting calves to amot is based on the assumption that the size of a field in which 2 se'ah of barley are sown equals the area of Tabernacle's courtyard. We know that the area of Tabernacle's courtyard is equal 5,000 square amot, which is 100 by 50. Thus, 1 se'ah of grain can be sold in 2,500 square amot. Now there are 6 calves in a se'ah. Hence, 3 calves, half a se'ah, can be sold in an area of 1,250 square amot.
Very good. Okay, good. So, says the Gemara Tanya Mihachi, we learn a brighter like this also. Somebody sells to his friend, I'm selling you a portion of a vineyard. So how much is he selling? How much can you assume he's selling you? Says the Gemara, Sumchus says that you cannot give the buyer anything less than 3 kabin, because 3 kabin is the minimum amount of a portion of a vineyard. Amar Rabbi Yossi argues. Rabbi Yossi says, "Ein elo ela divrei neviut." Rabbi Yossi says the words of Shmuel's father are nothing but prophecy. There's no logical way of deriving the minimum size for a division. Let's see, 27. According to Sumchus, the buyer is entitled only to the smallest area that can be cultivated profitably. Since the seller never specified how much he was selling, Sumchus rules that he can demand 1,250 square amot. This proves that a vineyard must be at least that size to be cultivated profitably, as Shmuel's fathers maintain. Rabbi Yossi says this is prophecy. How do you know that? 28. Shmuel's father relayed this to us just as a prophet relays information communicated to him by God, with no logical corroboration. Nevertheless, as is also true of prophecy, the information is definitely true, despite our inability to prove it logically. For Shmuel's father would not have made such an arbitrary ruling unless he heard it from his teachers. Okay, says the Gemara, Bevavel Mai, top right of 12a3. Bevel Mai, what's the minimum size vineyard in Babylon that you have to split, that you're allowed to split? Amarava Bar Kisna, Tlat Atziata, Bnei Teresa Gufne. Each partner has to receive 3 rows of vines that can be planted, and each row consists of 12 vines. So basically 36 vines. Kihechi derafi gavra beyoma. And so it's enough that each partner has a share large enough that a person can hoe for a full day, because you have to hire the worker. And if the worker doesn't have enough to work for a whole day, so then it's not worth the money. Amar Ravadimi bar demin Haifa. Ravadimi from Haifa says, Miyom shehara bet hamikdash. From the day the temple was destroyed, nitna levoa min neviim, nitna lechachamim. The power of prophecy was taken from the prophets and given to the sages. What does that mean? That means that the sages have Ruach HaKodesh. Says the Gemara, Atu chacham lav navihu. Is it true that no sage before the destruction was a prophet? So only there was prophets, and during the time of the temple, the sages didn't have prophecy? Says the Gemara, Hachi kamar. This is what it means. After the temple was destroyed, even though prophecy was taken from the prophets, and it was not that were not sages, mina chachamim no nitna. It was not taken from the sages. They retained their prophetic power even after the temple's destruction. Interesting. You could have a prophet that's not a sage. But there could be a sage that's also a prophet. How can you have a prophet that's not a sage? So okay, good. That's good. Like the Devorah, the Neviah, right? Or you have Esther, who was a Neviah also.
But you can call them sages also. The ladies, they're sages.
Right. If they know a lot of Torah, they could be a sage also, right?
Yeah.
But you could say also, for example, we said in the Simcha Beit HaShoeva, there was so much joy that people were able to derive prophecy from that joy. It was such an experience. So you see, the prophecy is a spiritual experience. Not necessarily you have to know a lot to be able to tap into it. You could just be very holy. If you're very holy and very pure-hearted and you don't do sins, so you could be a vessel for prophecy. But to be a sage is you need to know a lot. So could be a sage, could be a prophet, but a prophet doesn't have to be a sage. What are you saying, Michal?
Just a side question. Back then, did they have workers that only worked an hourly rate?
No, you hired somebody per day.
Per day?
And if you wanted me to work for you half a day, you have to pay me for the whole day, because I'll just go to someone else who will pay me for the whole day.
They didn't have something like, you cultivate this product and whatever profit I make can be like a share or whatever?
There were sharecroppers. There was such thing as sharecroppers. But if I hired a day worker, I hired him for the whole day. And if I didn't hire you for the whole day, so then I tell you an ultimatum. Pay me for the whole day, or else I go somewhere else.
This applies only for day work.
Yeah. Says the Gemara, let's do 31. That is, their minds are able to perceive far more than humans are normally able to perceive. Sages and prophets are both considered to have prophetic power, in the sense that they transcend the natural limits of human knowledge and perception. The nature of their powers, however, is different. A prophet merely becomes aware of a knowledge that is beyond a human's ability to ascertain. The sage, on the other hand, is accorded insight and an understanding beyond anything that human intelligence can actually perceive. So the sage understands more about the prophecy than the prophet. Prophet just repeats to you like he just got a script. I don't know what this means. I don't know who Josh is. I don't know what this place is. That's all God told me. But the sage, he'll understand more. He'll see insight into what he received.
A sage is basically a Talmid Chacham, and a prophet is someone that has a connection with Hashem.
Yeah. Says the Gemara, Amar.
Rabbi, you need to be sage to be prophet.
No,
Meaning, you need to.
you just need to be holy. You don't need to know a lot of Torah. You just need to be holy. Humble, do mitzvot, be simple, don't have bad thoughts. And then Hashem can make you a vessel, like a kli, to receive prophecy. But you don't have to be Talmid Chacham.
So you don't need to know the Torah, that's what he's saying.
You don't need to know so much. You don't need to be a sage, yeah. Says the Gemara, Amar Meimar, Chacham adif min navi. A sage is even greater than a prophet. Shneimar, v'navi levav chokhmah. As it says the pasuk in Tehillim. And a prophet has the heart of wisdom. So who is the prophet compared to? Minit lebemi. When we compare things, which one do we compare to the other? We compare the smaller one to the bigger one. Haviomer katan nitle begadol. We say the lesser one is compared to the greater one. So what is the lesser one? Navi. And he's compared to what? To chokhmah, to wisdom. Tamid chacham is better than Navi. Amar Abaye. Teida, you should know. Amar Gavra Rabba Milta mit Amra Mishmei de Gavra Rabba Achrina Kavate. One great sage will state something later, and the very same thing will be quoted in the name of another sage, even though they didn't speak to each other. So you see how this is the power of prophecy. They both said the same thing, even though they didn't speak to each other, because they both received this knowledge and this awareness from Hashem. Amar Rava, my kushya. Rava says, what's the problem? You can explain this even without prophecy. Dilma tarvayo b'nei had mazalaninhu. Maybe these sages were the same nature, and that's why they made the identical statements. So the Gemara says, no, I'll bring you another proof that sages have prophecy. Ela amarava teida, you should know, amar gavra rabba milta, one great sage will say something, mitamra, and the very same thing will be quoted, mishmei de Rebbe Kiva bar Yosef kavate, in the name of Rebbe Kiva, son of Yosef, even though they weren't in contact with each other. Now, Rebbe Kiva was the greatest genius of his time. Certainly no other sage has his intellectual capability. This phenomenon that can only be understood if sages have the power of prophecy. Okay, Rebbe Kiva, we know, he was even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu said he should give the Torah through Rebbe Kiva, not through me. Okay, fine.
How can they state the same thing? Wouldn't the sage naturally have a more of a insight to the prophecy and have a better interpretation?
So the Gemara is saying that how could it be that two sages say the same ruling? How did they come to the same conclusion? Everyone's different. So the Gemara says must be they're tapping into something deeper called prophecy. And since they're all prophets, and they're receiving, you have to understand, why does a person read something and he doesn't understand it? You read it again and you read it again, and all of a sudden you understand it. Because Hashem gives you an understanding. It says about Moshe Rabbeinu. He went up to Har Sinai, God gave him the whole Torah, he didn't understand, it was too much for him. So Hashem gave it to him as a gift. It's like you put a USB and you download the whole thing. So God gave it a download into Moshe Rabbeinu's brain. Yeah, the cloud, right, exactly. So if you have a zuchut, Hashem will give you understanding, give you wisdom. You understand? So therefore what happens? So the same thing with the sages. If the sages are so holy and they're able to tap into this wisdom that God will give them, this understanding, how could it be that they say the same thing? Must be that God gave them both the same understanding as a prophecy, right? Amar Avashi, 12b1. Amar Avashi, my kushya. What's the difficulty? Why do you have to say it's prophecy? Dilma lahai milta bar mazalehu. Maybe the second rabbi had the same mental nature, intellectual tendencies as Rabbi Akiva, even though he doesn't have the same genius, but still, just because he came to the same conclusion doesn't mean that he has prophecy. Al Amar Ravashi says a different proof. Teida damar gava rabbi milta mit amar alachal Moshe misinai kavate. A great sage will say something, and then later we'll see that it was actually a law taught orally to Moses at Sinai. Since such laws cannot be derived from the written Torah, must be he knew this through prophetically. Vidilma kesuma baruba. Maybe the sage stumbled upon this law as a blind man walks down his way through a skylight by sheer luck. How could it be that a blind man goes down the skylight without getting hurt? Okay, he got lucky. Maybe he got lucky. The Gemara says, no. Velav tam yahiv. But did the sage not give a reason for his ruling? Of course he gave a reason for his ruling. How do you know this reason? Must be prophecy. Many times people went to rabbis and they asked them questions and they told them things. And the rabbi said, do this X, Y, Z. And it ended up being exactly what the rabbi said. And sometimes it happened, the guy didn't listen, and exactly what he was supposed to do, he didn't do, and that's why he got hurt. And the rabbi said, I told you, you see, you should have listened. So you see, the sages, when they say something, especially in halacha, a lot of times it's like a prophecy. The poskim saying, let's say doctors are a big rabbi, and Avram's a big rabbi, and they argue about halacha. So Avram's not allowed to say, you know what, I don't want to say my opinion, I'll keep it to myself. Many poskim say, the Torah, you're allowed to argue in Torah if you're of the same generation, of the same level of genius, and therefore, when you withhold your opinion, says the poskim, it's like you're a prophet withholding your prophecy. If God gave you a certain insight and you don't say it, it's like a prophet who got prophecy and he's holding back his prophecy, which is asur. So therefore, you see the sages are very much connected to prophecy.
It's a bad prophecy.
No, why? If he brings a logic to corroborate his opinion, even though a doctor could argue, he should say his own opinion also, because it's like a prophecy. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Miyom shechara Beit HaMikdash, once the holy temple was destroyed, nitna levuah min neviim, nitna leshotim v'tinokot. Prophecy was taken from the prophets and given to shoteh, the people who are shoteh, and to people who are children, right? So sometimes children will say something, and it's really prophecy. Leshotim ma'hi, what does this mean? You said that prophecy was given to shoteh. What's an example? Yihad Amar Rav Ashi, like the story of Ramar Bar Rav Ashi, he was standing in the bazaar in Mechoza, and he heard the shoteh talking. What did he say? The head of the yeshiva that is now being appointed in the city of Mechesya, Tavyumi Hatim, signs the name Tavyumi. Okay, what's the story over here? Number 3. Okay, no, we'll skip that. Oh, let's see over here. It says the Gemara Amar, Rabbi Ravashi said to himself, Man Hatim Tivyomi Berabanan. Who among the rabbis signs his name Tavyomi? Ana, I do. Meaning to say that how the shoteh is basically saying, I'm going to be the head rabbi. Shma minali didi kai melishata. This statement informs me that now it's a fortuitous time for me to get to become the head rabbi. Kam ata, Ramar Ravashi went to Mechesya. Adaata, by the time he came, Imnu Rabbanan le'utuvei Rav Acha my Difti b'reisha. The sages of the academy already voted to install Rav Acha from Difti as the head of the yeshiva. But he didn't formally get installed. They were thinking about doing it. Kevan Deshami Data, once the rabbis heard Ravashi came, Shadur Zugad Rabbana Gabe Lemluchibe. They sent a pair of rabbis to consult with him and ask his permission to install Rav Acha. Akve, Ravashi held them back, and he said, wait. Hada Shador Zuga Rabbana Achrina. The rabbis in the yeshiva sent another pair of rabbis to Mar Ravashi because they thought the first pair went missing. Akve Gabe Adumal Be Asara. He waited and kept those people until they got to reach a complement of 10. Once he got 10 people next to him, he began a shiur and he started teaching. After they heard the shiur, they said, "Oh, Rabbi, you have to be our rabbi," instead of Rav Acha. So it comes out, the prophecy the Shoteh said came true. Why did he wait for 10 people? Because you can't start a lecture with less than 10 people. What is it talking about? Kala? Kala is the big shiur before the holidays. Before Pesach, before Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah. Okay, fine. And it says the Gemara, Kari bar Rav Acha Rav Acha heard about the situation. He says, Kol mer'in lo mimira metivin lo. Anybody dealt with harshly will not soon have good fortune visited upon him. Kol mitivin lo mira mer'in lo. Anyone dealt with generously will not soon have misfortune visited upon him. Number 8. Go ahead, Avi, with us?
Yeah.
Go ahead, 8.
For it's easier for someone to avoid misfortune than to triumph over it. Rav Acha's thought is analogous to the idea expressed in Shabbat. A person should always pray that he not take ill. For once someone takes ill, the heavenly court decrees, let him prove himself worthy of being healed. The statement of both of our Gemara and the one in Shabbat can be understood to mean that as long as a person has good fortune, this continues until he becomes unworthy of it. Once a misfortune befalls him, though, he must prove himself especially worthy before God helps him overcome it.
So Rav Acha is saying, I basically lost the opportunity to be the chief rabbi, the head of the yeshiva. So that means that I'm not going to have any time soon appointed again. So that was the case of Shoteh. We'll finish over here with the Tinokid. What's the kid? The kid. Tinokid Ma'ahi. What's a prophecy? What's a case of prophecy with a young girl? Why did it say the young girl, number 9? Actually, Rabbi Yochanan stated the power of prophecy was given to children. He never said it was only given to girls. Since the incident happened with a young girl, so therefore the Gemara specifies the young girls exercise the power of prophecy, even though it's true. Yeah, but really young boys also. Kihad de Batra of Chizda. There's a story, a daughter of Chizda.
Power of speech.
Hava yatva bekanfei davua. She was sitting on her father's lap as a young child. Hava yatve kamei Rava Rami Bar Chama. Rava and Rabbi Bar Chama were sitting in front of Rav Chizda. Amar la, Rav Chizda said to his daughter, "My menayu bait. Which of them do you want for a husband?
Both of them.
Rava or Rabbi Bar Chama?" Amar le tarvayu. She said both of them. Amar Rava. Rava says, "V'ana Batra." Rava says, "And I want to be last." Which means, how can you marry 2 husbands? You can't marry 2 husbands.
She gets married to then he dies. And she
Right. So Rava right away said, "And I'll be the last one." Which means that the other guy will marry first. He'll die, and I'll marry second. Right. So it ends up being that what? She said this and it came true. It was a prophecy. The child was speaking, and it's exactly what happened. So let's see 10. Believing the child's remark to be prophetic, Rava realized that whoever married her first would die first or divorce her. Therefore, he hoped that Rabbi Bar Chama would marry her first, then divorce her, and then he could marry her and stay married. Rabbi Bar Chama expressed no reciprocal wish, however, because he refuses to marry divorcees in principle. Rabbi Bar Chama never wanted to marry a divorcee, so he was okay with marrying her first. The only way for him to have married the child after Rava would if Rava married her first and then died. He didn't want to curse Rava with early death, so therefore he said nothing. So you see, that's a case where Shoteh and a child, prophecy came true. Baruch Olam.